Welcome to Our Drummers Musicians, your backstage pass to Melbourne's vibrant music scene. Recorded on a cosy couch in Brunswick, join us as we explore what it truly means to be a musician and speak to the diverse talents that make music in our city. On today's episode, we speak with Schembri, a talented guitarist and songwriter who has carved out a solid reputation in the Australian music scene. Aaron has released 2 albums and 11 singles, featuring collaborations with Australian music legends such as Ross Wilson, Normie Rowe, and Paul Norton. Beyond his solo work, Aaron's career has been enriched by his relationships with iconic figures, including the late Ross Hannaford of Daddy Cool, who mentored him from a young age. He has also toured as a guitarist with legends including Renee Geyer, Ross Wilson for the 50th anniversary of Eagle Rock, and recently arena shows with the Wiggles. Join us as we delve into Aaron's musical journey, from his beginnings in Reservoir to major stages across Australia, and discuss his upcoming single, Breaking Chains, which will actually be out by the time that this episode comes out. We want to take a moment to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodians of the land in which this podcast was recorded. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Aaron, welcome to the podcast.
G'day, mate. Nice to meet you.
Thanks for coming over.
No worries.
Especially after like a red-eye flight back from Sydney.
Bit late, bit tired, but hey.
Well, how's it been with the Wiggles?
Really good. It's a lot of fun, and I think people don't realise how much fun it is.
Yeah.
Mainly because it's a different audience you're working for.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this sense of satisfaction that I'm getting out of music that I don't get playing for Ross Wilson or playing for, when I played for Renee Geyer or even my own stuff. It's kind of like, well, you're a part of this thing where it's introducing this audience to their first musical experience, which I was one of those kids that went to the Wiggles.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, here I am doing what I've always wanted to do because of things like that when I was young. So I feel quite privileged to be doing that, and they're a bunch of funny people, good people to hang around and make music with,
Yeah. So what's it like when you're playing a show? Like practically the rundown of a band. Because like most people know the Wiggles as like, playing kids' music and then various forms of, maybe they've come to like the adult series of pub tours or come to concerts with their kids or when they were young. But it's changed so much from when I was a kid and it was just the four guys. What's the rundown like now, and how does it work with the live band?
Well, I think, the great thing about them is they're doing everything they can to keep up with the times, having the 8 Wiggles out the front, Anthony still being the original guy, having the 8 people at the front. You've got, John, who's Filipino. You got Sahai, who's adopted from, I'm going to forget the name. She's been adopted from overseas. I can't remember the name off the top of my head of where she's from. But it's bringing all these different cultures to the Wiggles shows.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when it was the 4 guys, it's like, well, most kids were looking at going, oh, I want to be like that guy, because I'm a boy.
Yeah.
But now there's all these different, parts of the world are kind of getting into it and going, okay, I want to dance like Sahai or, sing like John. It's really cool. It's, at first, I don't think I quite understood the whole 8 Wiggles, being the 4 Wiggles guy as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally get it, and it's brilliant. It really is.
Yeah, cool.
Including everybody, it's amazing. The music's a powerful thing, so it kind of shows in what they do, on stage or, with their music.
Yep.
Really. It's. I said this to Anthony yesterday. I was like, man, it's like coming here is like coming into another world, because you're at Wiggles headquarters in the studio there, and then they're filming. One of them's off filming, and one of them's going in to do a voiceover, and it's just like it's organized chaos, but it's great, and it's just incredible to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So how much interaction do you have then, like, with the audience? Do they, I don't know, do you have a chance to, interact a bit more where they're like, oh,
Personally?
yeah, I'd like to play guitar, or is it more like your sort of side of stage and come out for a guitar solo sort of thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody's on the stage at once, but the shows I've done, like every now and then you'll get, a young kid coming up with their parents, and like the parents will say, "Oh, he was playing guitar," and then you talk to them about music, and it's really cool because it's like, oh, if I have that little bit of an impact on someone, that's it's humbling.
Well, it's pretty special to be. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like you'd said, but it's like the first experience for a lot of young people to come and see like music live. So it's pretty cool that you get to be part of that.
I get it because I was one of those kids.
Yeah.
Like, Mum took me to see John Farnham when I was like 8, and, much younger, I went to see the Wiggles with Mum and Dad. I remember it clearly at Dallas Brooks Hall.
Wow.
It was, yeah. And, just watching them, dancing and singing and having fun and playing music, guitars and drums and all this sort of stuff. And, it kind of sunk into my head at that age. But then, years later, going to see John Farnham and going, oh, my God, look at this guy sing. What this music thing is sort of coming back to me from that young age. And then going to see John Fogerty the week later.
Okay.
It's like, okay, he's got a guitar. He's got a different guitar for every song. I want to do whatever the hell he's doing, that
cool.
It just stands out in my mind still now.
Wow.
So clearly.
Had you been playing it all as a kid, like before seeing these shows?
No, I mean, that was the turning point for me.
Okay.
Like music was always played at home and records and albums and all that sort of stuff. The old V8, not VH1, MTV maybe, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was MTV. So I was always watching film clips, and YouTube wasn't obviously that big. I don't think it was around back then. But yeah, it was just like music all day, every day.
And your grandfather was a musician too, right?
Yeah, he played clarinet, a bit of accordion, and he was like playing in sort of can't remember if they were like folk bands or something, little kid bands around in Malta. So they'd play on the streets in front of a pub or cafe or whatever.
Yeah,
as young kids, and like people would stand around and clap and give him money or buy him soft drinks, or it was really cool.
Yeah, okay.
And I remember learning piano because piano was my first instrument, and like my grandfather was like, finally somebody's doing what I was doing, My brother's a chippy, and my sister did dancing and, beauty therapy or something. And, so I kind of took the music genes, and he was stoked. And my folks, they supported every bit of wanting to learn music,
Yep.
or wanting to know about music.
Yeah, cool. So how long after starting piano did you pick up the guitar?
I learned piano when I was 12. By the time I got to high school, I was like, you're not going to get girls playing piano. So it's like, oh, geez, I'll learn guitar.
Okay.
And guitar really was really attractive to me because the fact that you could, for example, walk around the house and play it, or, chuck it in your car and go and play it at your friend's house or whatever. Whereas a piano was, we know what a piano is. Not quite easy to cart around. But yeah, that was, I remember there was one thing that stood out when I was watching like film clips, and it was like the Thunderstruck.
Oh yeah.
Film clip.
Yes.
And that sort of blew my mind. It's like, look at this guy. He's like in his school uniform, and he's running up and down this little runway or glass perspex thing, I think it was. And, there were the people hanging off the rafters and stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's That's pretty cool.
Awesome.
If I'm gonna be half as cool as that guy, I'm happy.
So you must have picked it up like the skills on the guitar pretty quick because you started playing like in pubs and stuff still as a teenager.
Yeah. I refer to that as kind of my work experience.
Okay.
Like, Dad had a friend that was like playing in pub cover bands, and I remember they played at my dad's 40th birthday, and I was still a bit too young to be confident enough to go and play in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
So they were saying, "Oh, why don't you get up and have a play?" And it's like, "Nah, I'll watch from afar."
Yeah. Yep.
And then a couple of years later, Mum's 40th came around, and same thing. They had the band playing, and they'd asked me leading up to it, "Do you want to play?"
Mm-hmm.
And by that time, I was like, "Oh, I'm not getting anywhere playing at home by myself. I'll play, 4 or 5 songs with them." So I did.
Okay.
Then I ended up joining the band. It started out as playing a set at pubs. Then it was like 2 sets, and then I was essentially playing the whole gig. So I was like playing pubs in Collingwood and Brunswick and, Fitzroy and
Mm-hmm.
all these big bikey car show sort of things. It's like any 15-year-old would go, "What the hell am I doing here?" It was just so, and I look back and I go, that really was a working experience. You learned how to deal with people. You learned how to appreciate what it is you're actually doing, because other people are appreciating it from where they're standing. So it's like, this is how I feel is me.
Yeah.
I feel like me,
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, what an experience being 15 playing in those kind of, venues with that sort of audience in the covers scene and stuff. Like,
And I tell you what, I saw all sorts of stuff out there. Like,
Yeah.
like most 15-year-olds are, working at KFC or Macca's or whatever. But I was doing a couple of gigs a month with them.
Yeah.
And I was just, the stuff that I saw, like fights and, I remember seeing one drunk fella standing at the pillar in front of the band, and he was just that wasted he'd wet himself.
Oh.
And I'm just sort of going, "Oh, okay.
Yeah, how confronting.
This is different."
Mm.
But it's cool, it's all part of it.
Yeah. Wow. So what was the journey like, if we move on, fast forward from the cover band work experience scene? Like, it's pretty cool that you knew Ross and got to have that relationship. What was that like?
Yeah, I look back at it and I kind of think, geez, I was pretty lucky because I think I was like 18 at the time, and he was one of the first people that I'd met who had success or had done a lot, had a lot of history in the music industry.
Yep.
So there was something that attracted me to people that had sort of lived it, breathed it, and kind of had stories about, what they did, how they did it, what not to do, where they screwed up. So, meeting Hannah was kind of like really eye-opening. And he kind of saw something in me that I didn't think that I saw, He obviously thought, okay, this kid's pretty good. Or not pretty good, but he's got the passion for music, and he was open to sort of, giving me tips and pointers and, just listening to stories about him on the road in the 70s with Daddy Cool. It's like, it was almost like I remember sort of talking to him and time traveling in my own head, seeing them doing what they were doing back then and, touring with the Kinks and, the whole Elton John thing where Crocodile Rock came about because of Eagle Rock. It's pretty cool. And he was, he fast became one of my favorite guitar players because he's just like, and you know what it's like with musicians, it's like most young musicians, especially at 18, 19, young, it's like put everything in the one basket while you're doing, at the time. And then, less is more. He was the epitome of that. And that's what I think I'd learnt most from him.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, yeah, but yeah, one of the greats.
Yeah. And how special that it was like not just, like most people can sort of reach out for like a lesson or something with somebody, but to have like such a mentorship,
Yeah.
it's so special.
Yeah, I don't take that thing for granted because it's kind of shaped who I am and what I do, how I do it.
Mm.
And the respect thing is like that was the big part too, like having respect for other musicians and what they do and how they do it. A lot of people don't have that,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah, I guess you just got to learn so much wisdom through the stories and having those conversations and
Yeah.
the advice that he gave you. And like clearly you've applied it. That's why you've, been so successful as a guitarist like that.
Yeah.
It makes a
Yeah.
big difference, I think.
It does, yeah. I think, yeah, I wouldn't have said it in those words, but yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And yeah, I it's in my everyday kind of thoughts,
Yeah.
even to do with nothing to do with music. You know, sometimes it pops in as like, yeah, let's go about it this way.
Well, what's it like, having had that time, but then doing Ross Wilson's 50-year anniversary tour of, the songs that that you heard these stories about from, the wild tours of the 70s, and now it's you on stage doing it, in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, my first encounter with Ross Wilson was like, I don't know, maybe nearly 10 years ago, and I'd gone to see him perform somewhere because I was, having a connection with Hannaford. I was, honed in on Daddy Cool's music. Like that, I was listening to those albums and going, geez, there's nothing really else out there like this sort of 50s doo-wop, but they're pop songs that they've written. And anyway, fast forward a bit, I started writing something for my first album with Ross Hannaford, which was kind of like a reggae thing because Ross Hannaford was a brilliant reggae player. Anyway, so I started it with him. Sadly, Hannah had got unwell, he'd passed, and I'd found it on my iPad, like just a demo of me and him playing along to it. There were no words. It was just like this piece of music, and I was like, geez, I got to finish that. Like, I want to put that on the album because I had all these guests. I didn't get the chance to have Hannah play on it. And I was like, well, I'll use that song and try and do something with it.
Okay.
And so anyway, I'd finished it, put the words to it, and I'd emailed Ross Wilson and I said, man, I've got this thing I did with Hannah, because they've got a long history. I look at them and I go, they're kind of like the Jagger and Richards of Australia. Like, that's how I envision them. I said, man, would you like to do it? It'd be great to sort of make it full circle for me, for him, and probably for you too. And he's like, yeah, it's a good little song. I'll sing on it. So he sang on it.
Oh, cool.
And then not long after that, I filled in with Ross in his band. I think it's probably like 2019 or something. So I've sort of been playing with him since then.
Yep.
But back to your question, sorry for the long-winded
No,
answer.
it's fine. I didn't realize that it was in that order that you'd done the collab by you reaching out first. I thought that you'd been playing with him beforehand. Wow.
And like over the last, since 2019, I think it was, because we'd always be playing together and on the road and that, we sort of, Ross still writes songs and he's brilliant at it. We sort of get to collaborate on things now. Like, but back to your question, it's a buzz when you're sort of standing there playing like, Eagle Rock or Come Said the Boy or Come Back Again. I mean, the list is just endless.
Yeah.
Like Touch of Paradise, Cool World, it's like a jukebox of the greatest hits. It's just crazy. And I feel so blessed to have the job of keeping those songs alive with him because they're such iconic songs.
Yeah. What's it like being like someone from like a completely different generation, but like in that scene playing those songs?
It's a privilege. It really is. Because like obviously you've missed that whole era. But it sort of baffles me that those songs still carry through decades later, you know. I pinch myself all the time. Like, you know, we did Blues Fest a couple of years ago or last year, whenever it was. And that was like, you know, probably 15,000 people or something ridiculous like that.
Yep.
And I just remember, you know, Ross had started playing the riff to Eagle Rock, and I've just looked out and I'm like, man, the power of music, or the power of a good song, the power of this guy. Like, Ross is up here playing something he's written in 1971, and people are going nuts. Young, old, like all sorts of, you know, Asian people, white people, black people, all in the crowd. It's just, it blew my mind a bit, a lot. It blew my mind a lot. And there's like little me just standing there playing, well, you know, here I am. There you go.
Oh, yeah, how cool.
Yeah. He's so good. Like, you know, bless him, he's 76 and he's not slowing down. You know, and I look at people like that and I go, I'd like to get to that age first, but to be doing it like that and doing it well, like it's so inspiring. And I said that to somebody the other day. I was like, man, so many people should take their young musician kids to go and see somebody like Ross or like Normie Rowe, to show them, like, you want the longevity, you got to look at these guys and go, what have they done to still be doing it at that age? You know, it's incredible. It really is.
Yeah. So what was it like when you got to do the support sets then on that as well, where you weren't just, you know, sort of like standing to the side of Ross, but like it's you playing your music, you know, as part of the tour?
I mean, you know, like doing your own stuff is it's kind of like, you know, you're up there bearing everything that you've got. You know, you're playing songs that people probably haven't heard, you know, but you're trying to win them over. And Ross gave me a lot of good tips. He calls it, I can't remember what he calls it. He's got this thesis of like, you know, being in your own star bubble.
Okay.
So I remember him telling me, he goes, I know you're playing with me, but you're in your own star bubble there. You own it. Don't mention the Ross Wilson show is happening after you. You've got to be you.
Right.
Make people go, oh, who's this young fella? Like, you know. And then obviously you get on and play with Ross later. Then they're like, oh, okay. What's he doing there?
Yeah, okay.
So he goes, never burst that star bubble. That's you.
Wow.
You know, little things like, you know, you'd never say it's your last song. I'm thinking, okay, that's interesting. So I've adapted these things in everyday, you know, every gig I do, really.
Yeah.
You never say it's your last song, because it's like, well, if you're in the crowd and they're kind of watching you go, this is my last song, it's like, oh, this guy actually can't wait to get out of here. And it makes sense. It makes sense. And the other thing he said, he goes, don't ever mention the main act if you're supporting somebody, because you'll trigger the audience and go, oh yeah, that's right. I'm here to see Ross Wilson.
Oh.
Which that fascinated me a lot. It's like, you know,
so interesting.
You'd do that and you'd go, oh, geez, it's a bit rude sort of not mentioning the, no, well, you know, you're there doing what you do. Don't deter people from what you're doing.
Wow.
Like, yeah. So I learned a lot doing those, like, and I've done shows like that before with other people or my own shows. But doing those ones with Ross, like, he had those little pointers and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
You're a lot clever than I thought you were. And he'd learnt that over the years. So it's like, you know, passing on that advice is so cool. You know? And, you know, I wouldn't have thought of it like that.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
Isn't it?
Like, yeah. It's
It
really
sort of
making
makes
me
you
think.
It does. It makes you think. It's like, well, everything you think you knew, you actually didn't know.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
so you'll probably notice it when you go to gigs, like, And there was one thing he said about like, saying it's your last song. It's like if you say it's your last song coming up, everyone's going to go, shit, it's his last song. I'm going to go and get a beer while he's doing his last song. So I can beat the crowd. It's spun me out. I was like,
what great advice for support artists.
Yeah.
Like,
be the star. The star. You know.
Wow.
You know, whether you're supporting Jimmy Barnes or Bob Dylan or whoever it is, be the star.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Isn't it?
Well, if we look at your first album, you had some amazing collaborations. Can you tell me a bit about that? Like, was it everything like with Ross? You just reached out to some people, or did you know some of them, beforehand at all?
Yeah. Most of them I'd played with before. Like Russell Morris, I'd worked with a few times before. Colleen Hewitt, I did like the Go show with her at the Palais.
Okay.
So it was kind of like there were connections there, but I had to reach out and say, "This is what I'm doing. Who's interested?" You know.
Yep.
Mind you, the album took like 4 years to make because everybody obviously is busy. I was busy.
Yep.
You know, paying bills and gigging, as everybody else was. So it was just more of like I'd had these songs that I didn't know what to do with them, and I didn't want to sing them myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've always gotten a kick out of being a songwriter for other people. I've enjoyed that nearly as much, maybe a little bit more than doing my own stuff.
Oh, interesting.
Because it's like you can lay it on the table and go, "This is what I think it is," but I want you to take it in this direction, or show me a direction that you hear it going in, and then it's like this, immediate kind of collaboration where it's like, the old two heads are better than one.
Yep.
So that was kind of the case with that. Like with Kevin Burridge, I had the chorus written out for a song called Some Kind of Rebel, but I had it as something I'm not, no kind of rebel or something like that. And he kind of walked in, he goes, "Man, let's change the chorus because I am a rebel. I'm some kind of rebel." That's what it became.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay. Well, he's singing it from his point of view now, which is great because I was singing it from some other place.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of, getting on the phone to some of these guys, and it's like quite daunting because, they've all had hits and great songs in Australian history.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a long process. It was maybe torturous at times because you're trying to get everything done and, make it the best it could be.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm pretty proud of that one. I don't think, a lot of people say no one's ever done what you've just done. Like getting all these historical artists, Russell and Colleen, they did a duet together and they'd never sang together in, the last 50 years or whatever.
Yeah, right.
So that was kind of cool getting them to sing as a duet kind of thing. It was like, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, how special.
Oh, it is. It is.
Yeah.
And, the fact that I'd launched the album in, I think it was like September 2019 on a Wednesday night at Mimo Hall. It was like sold out.
Wow.
All the guests came down from interstate to be there, and it was just so cool. Like,
yeah.
And the concept of the show was like play a couple of songs of their hits and the new song that they'd done on the album.
Cool.
So it was quite a fascinating concept for me, and I think for everybody else as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was so much fun,
Yeah.
I look back and go, Jesus, I can't believe you made it through that,
It's pretty wild, especially as like a first album. Like a lot of people bring in a lot of guests on albums that they do
later on.
Yeah. But to start like that, it's a great concept, and it's a really cool album.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, I appreciate it. And I think it's more like it kind of happened like that because I was not at the time not really confident in my voice.
Okay.
I'm still not a confident singer, but I've learnt to sing a little bit better, as opposed to 4 or 5 years ago. But yeah, I think it was more like, these songs aren't suited to how I sing it at that time,
Mm.
and yeah, giving them to other people was just, it felt like a no-brainer.
Yep.
But yeah.
Wow. So then, like the second album was a lot more covers. Was
Oh,
that
yeah.
like a lockdown thing? Like I'm at home and I want to have a creative outlet, but
Yeah.
I don't want to spend another like 4 years working on original stuff.
What happened with that was like when that whole situation started. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. A few of us kind of bunkered into the studio for the lockdown thing.
Okay.
So we weren't breaking rules or anything. We were just trying to keep sane more than anything, because we'd been musicians or studio engineers for most of our lives, as many people would have experienced. You stop it, it's like, shit, who am I? I can't afford to go backwards mentally. That's how I felt.
Sure.
So we all bunkered in the studio and lived there for most of the pandemic. But I was learning all these covers and recording them with Chris, the engineer, and one of the other guys was learning to do filming and film clips and stuff, just because he had nothing else to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like a working train. It was like, I'd learn this song, record it with Chris, and then we'd film it. So by the end of, that month, I think there was like 8 songs of covers, and I was like, I'm happy with those covers because they're kind of meant something to me somewhere down in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so we'd compile them together, and I think I had a song called "It's Not Goodbye." It was out before that, and there's another one. Oh, one from the City Lights album, the first album, and we'd redone them as acoustic things.
Yep.
Or piano and acoustic, I think one was. And then I sort of looked at it and I was like, oh, well, I've got nothing else to do. Let's just do it I'll do it as an album, like this lockdown session thing. And essentially that's what it was. It was like, there was sessions during lockdown.
Yeah.
I was doing all these covers and then revisited some of the original songs that I'd done. And that's just kind of how that happened. It wasn't really planned. It was just like, I need to do something because I'm going to go mental. That was the only thing. And everybody was, in on it. And it's like, yeah, let's do it because we don't want to go mental either.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. It was, and I think a lot of people couldn't do that at the time because of, the situation. So I was quite lucky to still feel normal.
Well, I think you had a great way of dealing with it. Like,
lucky, very lucky. It's just that hit like a ton of bricks. It's like, as probably for yourself too, like, your everyday life, and then it stops. And then you're trying to hang on to these little pieces that you do, which make you function. And then it's gone. It's like, oh, okay, think outside the box. I got to think of something here.
Yeah.
And a lot of people couldn't, were unfortunately not able to do that and suffered for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes me a bit angry about the whole thing.
Sure.
As most people probably would feel.
Well, if you look at like, it's interesting thinking about your like first album of collaborations, the second one of lockdown acoustic versions. Yeah. With the new single coming out, are we going into like a third album that's just you?
Good question, because I was just thinking then, I was like, geez, I actually haven't done an album of just me singing.
Yeah.
That's probably what you're getting at, which no, I haven't. I've got songs in the can that I've recorded over the last couple of years, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
I ducked over to Nashville to record 4 tracks last year or the year before last year, which I've sort of revisited and gone, okay, I'm just trying to make them better for myself, creatively. So I've revisited some of those. I've written some new songs. This Breaking Chains kind of just happened quickly out of the blue. It's like, I had a call, I'll be doing a podcast, and there's a docu-series towards the end of the year for the woman was jailed for, money laundering and all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like, quickly I need to write something. So I started writing it with Axel Whitehead, and it just sort of naturally pen to paper, and it just kind of happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll probably kind of in maybe the next year I'll try and compile what I've done, singles in the last few years, and some of the stuff that I haven't put out, and
Mm-hmm.
try and put them as an album. But as we said before, singles are the thing now. Like albums aren't, unless I kind of always had in my mind, if I ever do another album, it'll just be vinyl.
Oh, okay.
Only hard copies. And I did that with the first album. I was selling hard copies of the vinyl and the CD
Mm-hmm.
for a year after the album came out. And then I went to Spotify.
Ah.
So I was like, I want people to hear it as a whole thing,
Yeah.
We were talking about that before.
Mm.
Yeah, so that'd probably be what I'd be doing for the next one.
I like that.
When there's a next one.
That's a great idea, to have a physical album year.
Yeah. And nowadays you get like vinyls, and it's got like the download card, and times are different now.
Mm.
Like even working with Ross on his latest EP, his last album he did was like 12 years ago, and he goes, man, everything's changed. It's online, like TikTok, Facebook, all this stuff that was irrelevant back then, or wasn't even around back then.
Yeah.
So he, even he's kind of going, okay, how do I adapt to, you put out an EP, where do you can't print it and say, yeah, let's put it in JB Hi-Fi or something now.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's fascinating. It's changed so much.
Yeah. So do you have a massive vinyl collection at your place?
I got 823. So yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because, like, as you were saying before, people give you stuff, give you albums to listen to, and it's like, oh, never heard of this guy, but I'll go and buy some of his other albums.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, stuff I've inherited from my granddad, my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Ross gave me a whole heap of like 45s of stuff that he'd collected as a kid.
Okay.
Like in the Daddy Cool days.
Oh, wow.
And like, it's like, hippie shake and all this really cool stuff that was like, you listen to them and you go, oh, that's actually making sense as to why Daddy Cool sounded like the way they do.
Yeah.
Oh. So yeah, it's just all sorts of stuff in there at home.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
So we're doing this new segment in the podcast where I get guests to ask questions of the next guest.
Is this Jake from One Thaggy?
This is Jake Amy from One Thaggy. It's amazing that you
that I knew
that you knew. Anyway, so I'd like you to answer Jake's question.
Cool. Oh, question. There's a few like little things that happen. Blues Fest was an incredible experience for me, playing with Ross at Blues Fest. Playing, Australia's biggest arenas with the Wiggles, like, doing kids shows in the day and then adults only at night. It felt like the closest thing you'd ever be to being in the Beatles, right? Screaming people, 15,000 screaming people. Yeah, that's a couple. Most impactful thing, I feel quite impacted when I write a bit of music and someone takes it and is happy to use it.
Mm.
I feel that every time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, that's what you do as musos. You create and hope it touches somebody.
Yeah.
Whether they're going to sing it or they're going to listen to it,
Mm-hmm.
That happens every time.
Yeah, have there been any like releases like that of yours where you're the songwriter but not on the track at all?
I don't. No. Good question. I think anything I've written and given to somebody, I've played on it or sang BVs on it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that I haven't played on. Like Sam and Sam, I'd written some for them. Actually, no, yeah, I've played on it. I played it, yeah. I was like, no, did I? Yes, I did. Yeah.
All right. Well, what would you like to ask the next guest?
Do we know who the next? No, we're not supposed to know.
No.
Oh, gee.
Well, you don't know.
No, I don't. You know, though.
If I checked my
No,
calendar.
that's all right. Yeah, that. Okay. To the anonymous. I have to think about that. To the anonymous guest, what makes you keep doing what you do musically?
Yeah.
Good question.
It is a good question. Would you like to answer it?
Okay. What makes me do it? I think what makes me keep doing it is the fact that I enjoy doing it. And if other people enjoy it in their own way, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think most important thing is like you got to enjoy it.
Mm.
Otherwise, you wouldn't do it. Like really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez, I love doing it. There's no other way to put it, and that's why I still do it.
I think it comes across. Like,
oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like it's really obvious that you love what you're doing and you're great at it, and like in all the different contexts that you do it.
Yeah. I mean, having finger in different pies, I suppose is the saying, makes it interesting for me, and writing a song for a person that's gone to jail. And 2 days before I was writing Wiggles songs, like, you can't plan that stuff. It's like, you just got to do it,
Yeah, yeah. It's just
it.
happening and you're doing it all.
I love it. And
Well,
doing things like this is great because it's like, as we said at the start, you get to meet different people and kind of understand where they've come from and what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing it for me and, whoever listens to the podcast. It's
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's nice to have your voice and your scene that you're a part of. Both like your original stuff and the session work.
Yeah, thanks.
And the Wiggles.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like you said, it's like fingers in different pies, but it's all still connected and it's like all Melbourne, Australian music. And, it's nice to be able to like have these little conversations where we get to know you a little bit more.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
No.
Is that it? Are we wrapping up?
Well,
that's okay. I was just like, thanks for having me. I'm out of here. Sorry.
If you can give me 30 more seconds.
Yeah.
I like to end with 5 rapid fire questions.
Yes, go. I like these things.
What's your favourite venue to play in Melbourne?
Oh, the Palais is
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll say the Palais because, I've seen Bob Dylan there. I've seen John Farnham, John Fogerty, Bonnie Raitt, all these incredible artists. And then you kind of, you stand up there and you go, I kind of know what Bob Dylan feels like standing on the Palais stage, That's pretty cool. I love that place.
Well, what
It's a
about
historic place?
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah. That's pretty cool that you saw Bob Dylan play there. When was that?
I've seen him a couple of times there over the last 9 years.
Yeah, cool.
20, whenever he was here last.
Yep.
And the time before that.
Oh, yeah, sick.
Love it.
All right, what's your dream venue to play at?
Dream venue? Jeez. Well, I suppose, like, you'd probably put, like, Madison Square Garden at the top,
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, like, Anthony from the Wiggles was telling me that they'd sold out Madison Square Garden 13 times in a row.
Oh, wow.
Think about that. Ed Sheeran hasn't even done that. This was, 15, 20 years ago, whenever they were at their peak. Yeah, Madison, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, 13 times.
In a row.
Oh. All right, what's your coffee order?
Oh, gotta go the almond latte, no sugar, or a long black. It's either that or that.
Mm-hmm. Favorite place to get food after a gig?
I've made actually the last few years, the last 5 or 6 years, I have a rule of not eating after a gig.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I think it's just more like to be healthy, because you don't realize how many times you stop to eat after a gig, and sometimes when you eat after a gig, you're wired. It's like I'm ready to go do another 10 gigs at the moment.
Yep.
But I remember going to Danny's Burgers a lot.
Okay.
You know Danny's Burgers
on
Brunswick Street, I think it is. The
I'll
best burgers.
I'll have to check it out
in Melbourne. You'll love it. But I remember stopping there, playing in pubs and stuff at 15.
Yeah, cool.
I'd drop off with Dad and eat there. Yeah, good. Yeah, go see him.
We should go get a burger together.
Oh, we could, mate. I am a big fan of Danny's Burgers.
All right, that sounds fun.
Let's lock it in.
Finally, what is the favorite instrument that you own?
It's like asking a parent, what's your favorite child? Just one? All right, just one. Jeez.
You can give me a couple if that's two.
No, I'll try and get one.
I've tried out a new last question, so you can tell me how you feel about this after.
I'll my Gibson SG.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only answering that because it's like I've had a lot of, like, what's when they say, like, if these walls could talk, if that guitar could talk, like it's been everywhere with me around Australia and played shows with Paul Kelly and stuff like that. It's if that could talk, I that's my favorite. It sounds good, plays good, it's light, and it's got some stories in it.
Yeah, sick.
The first story for it was like, when I first got it, I was playing as a young bloke in those pubs and stuff. I think it was the Barleycorn in Collingwood or something.
Okay.
And the guitar was sitting there, and this drunk guy was walking up. Oh, can you play da-da-da-da? Had his beer in his hand, and he's leant over the guitar in the stand, and he's dropped it. This is the first night I took that guitar to a gig. My folks had bought it for me. That's probably another reason it's special. And he dropped it, and it's just like this great little line, scratch, dint line on the front of it, and I was like, but I see it now and I go, that happened. That's what happened.
Yeah, the memories.
That bastard.
Well, Aaron, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, mate, thanks for having me.
So nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Your music's really cool. Thanks for sharing all the stories. This has been really fun.
Awesome, mate. Yeah, absolutely. Ditto. It's keep plugging away, mate. It's great. People doing things like this. I love it.
Thanks very much. Thanks for joining us on Our Drummers Musicians. I hope you enjoyed getting to know another Melbourne muso like I did. Help us grow by leaving a review, share the podcast with friends and family, and subscribe on our website for extra info. Got a guest you'd love to hear on the show? Please let us know at ourdrummersmusicians.com. See you next time.